What kind of neighbor steals your rainwater and thinks they'll get away with it? That's the question I was asking myself, standing in my backyard, staring at 4 massive rain barrels drained bone dry overnight. Just yesterday, they were brimming, catching the runoff from a storm that finally broke our month-long drought. My garden, barely clinging to life, depended on that water. Now, the sun scorched the cracked dirt where my tomatoes used to grow, and from the other side of the fence, I heard the faint hiss of sprinklers and a woman humming like she didn't have a care in the world. I followed the sound like a hound on a scent and found Linda. Saw Linda, lounging in a deck chair, sipping iced tea, her lawn so green it looked like it belonged in a magazine. A hose stretched across our shared fence, one end hidden in her rose bushes, the other dripping beside my empty barrels. When she saw me, she didn't flinch. She just smiled, smug as ever, and when I asked if she took my water, she shrugged. Your rain wasn't doing anything. I put it to good use. Fair's fair. That's when I knew this wasn't just about water. This was war. We live in one of those semi-rural neighborhoods where everyone pretends to be friendly but secretly measures your grass to see if it's HOA compliant. The county had slapped us with level 3 water restrictions 2 weeks earlier: no lawn watering, no car washing, no kiddie pools. You could only water gardens with recycled water or rain capture. So I did the right thing. Spent weekends rigging up a system of elevated rain barrels fed by my gutters, complete with a filter and pump. It wasn't pretty, but it worked. My sunflowers started perking up, my zucchini stood a chance. Meanwhile, Linda's yard looked like a golf course in the Sahara. Linda's the kind of woman who thinks rules are for other people. She once reported me to code enforcement because my mailbox was a shade too blue. She leaves passive-aggressive notes on windshields and sneaks around at night to snip weeds from other yards so hers looks flawless. But stealing water? That was a new low. At first, I wanted to believe it was a mistake. Maybe a kid messed with the hose. Then I saw the footprints, small, fresh, circling my barrels. They weren't mine. I followed the fence and found drag marks from a hose and a gardening trowel with Evan scratched into the handle. Evan's her nephew, a lanky teen who once tried to charge me $5 to toss my dog's ball back over the fence. I marched to Linda's door, trowel in hand, and asked if she wanted to explain. She laughed, like it was all a big joke, and said, "Kids get curious. Maybe it's fate. Your water's doing good now." My setup had taken weeks and more cash than I'd planned, all to keep my garden alive. I told her I wanted compensation. She offered me a Do Law 5 coffee card and said, "That should cover it." I walked away, teeth grinding, but I wasn't going to scream. Not yet. I was going to get proof. That night, I set up a wildlife camera, the kind that sends motion alerts to your phone. I hid it behind a planter, aimed at the barrels, and waited. The first night, nothing. The second night, at 2:17 a.m., my phone buzzed. There was Evan, creeping along the fence with a flashlight, unscrewing a barrel cap, and siphoning water into a hose he dragged back to Linda's yard. He took 3 barrels, Leah vying only sludge. The footage was crystal clear, his face, his movements, undeniable. I saved it, printed screenshots, and showed up at Linda's door the next morning. She was mid-phone call, laughed when she saw me, and said into the phone, "Gotta go, Waterbiz here." I handed her the photos and said, "This stops now." She barely glanced at them, smirked, and said, "That's not theft. That's community sharing." I asked if she wanted to test that in court. She shut the door in my face. The worst part? She didn't think she'd done anything wrong. So I locked down my barrel spadlocks on the caps, hoses tied high, even a line of coyote urine along the fence to keep her out. The next morning, 2 barrels were tipped over, dented, with a pair of yellow-handled shears lying nearby. I picked them up like Evy Denke from a crime scene. This wasn't about water anymore. It was personal. Linda had targeted something I'd built with sweat and pride. I wasn't just going to defend myself, I was going to make her regret it, quietly, legally, and dirtier than she'd ever expect. At the next HOA meeting, I knew trouble was brewing. Usually, it's just 5 retirees arguing over flowerbed colors, but this time, a dozen people showed up. Linda sat up front, legs crossed, a folder of papers in her lap, looking like she was about to win a lawsuit. I sat in the back, letting her have her moment. Halfway through, she stood, cleared her throat, and passed out a printed email claiming I'd violate HOA rules with unsightly barrels and questionable runoff practices. It was nonsense, written in that HOA tone that's half lawyer, half middle school principal. The president, a quiet guy named Martin, read it and looked at me, waiting for a response. I didn't stand. I just said my barrels were legal under county drought rules and didn't need HOA approval. Linda jumped in, saying they were a soil blight and a danger to kids, claiming she had photos of children playing near them. It was alieno photos, just her word. I stood then, slowly, and passed out my own photo stills of Evan siphoning water, clear as day. The room went quiet. Linda's face twitched, but she said Evan was just curious, and I was overreacting. She even accused me of using toxic coyote urine to harm pets. I reminded everyone her nephew vandalized my property, and I had every right to protect my land. Martin mumbled about reviewing it later, but Linda's glare told me this wasn't over. I went straight to the hardware store. Bought heavy-duty padlocks, tamper-proof hinges, and motion sensors with alarms. That weekend I turned my barrels into Fort Knox, chaining them to concrete blocks. I even stuck a fake security sign nearby. It felt good, but it didn't last. 2 days later, 3 barrels were flipped, bolts ripped off, 1 chain cut. The 4th was dented but intact. Those yellow-handled shears were back, jammed into the soil. I bagged them with gloves, calm as ever. This was property damage now, and Linda had just handed me a winning card. I didn't report it yet. Linda wanted a shouting match. I wanted a knockout she'd never see coming. I used to work summers for a plumber, and I knew a few tricks. The plan was simple, legal, and didn't require stepping on her property. I called an old buddy who still worked in irrigation and owed me a favor. I told him about a neighbor stealing water, the HOA drama, and my idea for a prank with a point. He laughed for 10 minutes straight and said he was in. Late that night, we crept along the fence and found Linda's sprinkler pipe, an old PVC joint feeding her control box. We didn't break anything, just rerouted it. We ran a low-pressure line from a sewer cleanout in my yard. No contamination, no backflow, just enough to swap her water source for 1 cycle. We covered our tracks and waited. Her sprinklers ran every morning at 6:15. I barely slept, watching the clock. At 6:10, I grabbed my coffee, leaned on the fence, and waited. The sprinklers clicked on. For 10 seconds, nothing. Then a sputtering sound, followed by a stench like death itself. Brown water sprayed everywhere, coating her roses, soaking her new patio furniture. The smell was brutal even from my side. Linda burst out in a pink robe, gagging, yelling, covering her nose. I sipped my coffee and walked inside. The smell lingered for days. She hired cleaners, dumped bleach everywhere, but the sour stink stuck. Neighbors detoured to avoid her yard. One kid on a bike gagged and pedaled off. I didn't brag, didn't smirk when I saw her clutching air freshener, but inside? I was grinning ear to ear. The sewer stunt didn't just humiliate her, it shook her control. Linda thrived on making people bend. Now her perfect lawn was brown, her guests stopped coming, and even Evan stayed inside. But Linda doesn't quit. She reported me to the city, claiming I'd contaminated the water line. The letter was vague, but the accusation was clear. I laughed not because it was funny, but because it was so hypocritical. She stole my water, wrecked my barrels, and now played VY Tim. I gathered my EVY Denke, wildlife chem footage, vandalism photos, HOA rules, timestamps proving my prank was self-contained, even a plumber's invoice showing no city lines were touched. When inspectors came, I handed them a folder and smiled. They checked my setup, chuckled when I mentioned Linda's mystery sprinkler issue, and left. Later, they spent an hour at her place, inspecting her pipes. I saw one shake his head, pointing at the cracked PVC we'd rerouted. Linda flailed her arms, losing her grip on the story. The city cleared me, but Linda called an emergency HOA meeting. The room was packed, everyone wanted the drama. She wore a blazer like she was pitching a merger, accused me of environmental sabotage, and waved a fake petition with 5 signatures to find me. I let her talk, then passed out my folder, photos, footage, inspection clearance. I kept it calm, factual. When I finished, silence. Martin said no action against me, but they'd review Linda's role on the Water Ethics Board. Someone clapped. Linda's face went red. She screamed I'd poisoned her lawn, humiliated her, turned everyone against her, then stormed out, slamming the door so hard a blind fell. Her yard fell apart, patchy grass, wilted roses. She avoided eye contact, head down. Then Evans slipped climbing my fence, fell face first into my pond, flailing in mud. The wildlife cam caught it all. I uploaded it titled, Evans Swim, and it hit 500,000 views in a day. Remixes popped up with duck sounds, opera music. Linda's kingdom was crumbling, and the neighborhood was laughing. Then a MOVYing truck showed up. Furniture, boxes, all loaded up. That evening, Linda knocked on my door, looking tired, eyes puffy. She handed me a letter threatening a defamation lawsuit, said, "This isn't over," and left. It was a bluff. I filed it away. A news anchor called, wanting my side for a segment on water disputes. I agreed, no names mentioned. The piece aired, painting me as a quirky hero. Support poured in messages, a conservation grant. Linda's house went dark, sprinklers off, cameras down. One day, an envelope appeared. "I'm Leah VYing. You win." I tossed it in my folder and exhaled. The neighborhood changed. A for sale sign went up, then a sold sticker. New neighbors, a young couple, moved in, hosting a cookout with burgers and laughter. I brought pickles, sat in their yard, and felt the tension lift. My garden thrived, plum tomatoes, tall sunflowers. A conservation group featured my barrels in their newsletter, calling me a water warrior. I spoke at a town meeting, shared tips, and saw people nod, inspired. Letters came, thanking me, asking for advice. Linda popped up in a news article, suing another HOA, same old tricks. I didn't care. My war was done. One morning, I stood in my yard, the sky gold and purple, barrels half full, birds chirping. I took down the old sprinkler warning sign, leaned it against the shed. The breeze carried barbecue smoke, kids laughed, and for the first time in months, I wasn't watching my back. Linda taught me some people never change, they just move. But I learned something too: you don't need to shout to win. You just need a good camera, a locked barrel, and enough patience to let the selfish drown in their own mess.